Today we're joined by Usman Dawood, lifestyle and architectural photographer and self-confessed technology geek. Usman is a major contributor to the world's leading photography publications, including Digital Camera World, FStoppers and Petapixel. In this episode, we consider the importance of photography in building a successful brand. We discuss when business owners should use a professional photographer and how to find the best person for the job.
It's not just like, I'm going to get a photographer in. No, you got to get a photographer in that you are going to work with, that you understand, and you know that their style is going to be specific for what you're trying to achieve. That's where brand guidelines come in. You can't just hire any old photographer like, oh yeah, he's a professional, oh I know this guy.
We also consider some of the common mistakes that clients make when hiring for the first time and the best way to brief a photographer to get the most from them. For clients, we touch on how the quality of your images reflects the quality and care of your business. What do your images say about you and your brand?
Your pictures have to fit your brand. Like, if your pictures don't fit your brand, what are they doing there? Like, they serve no purpose then.
Then you're stalking.
Yeah, this is why stock images don't work.
How does budget impact your decisions on photography?
So if you've got products, let's say you've got a brand new product and you're in a particular market, you're a luxury product owner or something like that, the last thing you probably want to do is have your luxury item, which is expensive, photographed by a phone on like some table or something, or photographed by someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing. You probably do want to hire a professional photographer whose particular style you like.
Regardless of your position in the world of photography, there's no doubt that you'll gain some insights from this thought-provoking conversation. With your host, George Chioka.
Usman, thank you so much for coming. Even if it was like so last minute.
It's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I guess if you can just introduce yourself and just if you can tell us a bit more about how did you start it? How did you end up in photography in the first place, I guess?
It was a girl. I mean, it's always a girl, right? I started in photography like almost 10 years ago. I bought this camera. I went to Morocco, I bought this camera and I was like really excited about it. I was like, yes, I'm taking pictures. And, you know, for me, I'd only looked at pictures on like smartphones and, you know, I mean, we didn't have smartphones per se then. It was more like phones, right? Compared to what they are now. But the pictures on them were crap. And then I saw pictures on like I say proper DSLR. Entry-level DSLR, but I saw the pictures on the back of the screen. I was like, what the hell? I didn't know pictures could look this good, because I just didn't experience anything like that. I know, rough upbringing. And then I bought my first camera. It was a Canon 1100D. It was like 300 and something quid camera, basic level, 18 megapixels, had barely any features or whatever, and I thought, this is amazing. I'm like a professional now. I'm taking like the most amazing pictures ever. I took a picture of this orange and I was like, yeah, I'm like amazing. I was like, patting myself on the back for the most basic pictures ever. And I went to Morocco, took a whole bunch of pictures, and I mean, all of them were crap. Like, none of them I'm gonna ever use. Like, not a single picture there is usable, but I was proud of it. I was happy at the time. And then I came back, and then this girl that I knew, who I dated briefly, she was like, hey, you've got a camera. Do you want to come join me and take some pictures with me? So I was like, yeah. Because, in my head, I was like a professional. In my head, I was like, I'm the dude. I'm the guy. So we went to this shisha lounge and we took a bunch of pictures. And it was great. Like, I really enjoyed it. And again, I didn't take any pictures that were worth keeping. Like, looking back at it, I can't even find those pictures. I don't even know where they are.
But I framed them.
I wouldn't have framed them. I would have burnt them. They were terrible, right? And it was just the vibe. It was just the feeling. Like, I just really enjoyed it.
But were you planning? I mean, obviously,
hell no.
You weren't planning. So photography wasn't something.
There was no plan. There was no freaking plan. I was just trying to impress this girl again.
So from trying to impress the girl to actually taking high-end pictures, interior pictures, how did you manage to get from the point of taking shitty pictures, as you said, to the point of actually doing architecture photography?
It took a while. I'm not going to lie. This was something which it took a long time, and it took me, in fact, it took me like 7 years just to get comfortable with what I was shooting and just be happy, just like figure out my style or figure out my kind of my way of shooting or the way that I want to shoot. Like I had no clue. It felt like I had no idea what I was doing for like the first 7 years. It was just, I was just fumbling my way through. And then it just clicked. It's kind of like Flash. The first year or so when I was shooting with Flash, I just couldn't get my head around it. And Imran, which you did the podcast with earlier, I interned with him actually. I actually learned in his studio. And for a long time, he was trying to teach me how to use Flash and doing all of this stuff. And I just couldn't get it. I had no idea where or what light or this and that. I just didn't. And then one day it just clicked. It literally just kind of clicked. And I was like, oh, okay, I know how to do Flash now. This is easy. And then other things started clicking, like what I wanted to shoot. Because I tried doing weddings, I tried doing events, I tried doing like portraits at that stage when I was still kind of new in terms of like Flash. I didn't know what I was doing really. But at that stage, portraits, I wasn't very good at it, obviously, because I didn't have the skills for it. And weddings and all those kinds of, that kind of photography, I just wasn't interested in it. I tried doing it, it just wasn't my vibe. Yeah. And then I got into architecture and that just clicked. It just sit well with me because I'm quite nerdy. I'm quite technical with what I do. So that was perfect for me. You know, you have to use tilt shift lenses. You got to measure everything. You got to do all this. It's just, it's quite nerdy and I love that. So that worked really well for me. But obviously since then I've kind of moved on to, I haven't moved on. I still do architecture. I still do interiors, but I'm also doing other types of photography as well. So
would you say you're still discovering yourself basically within the world of photography? You're still trying to find your...
No, I feel like I found myself. I feel like I'm happy where I'm at. I'm not really fussed about trying to expand beyond that because I'm working on several different projects. I think the more interesting thing for me now is video. Video's been quite interesting for me. It's something which I've been working on quite a lot, but I don't really want to get into it with a point of, you know, using this kind of rig because this is like a heavy deal. Yeah, this is not my area. I'm talking about shooting more lightweight, very small footprint filming, and I prefer that. I think in the studio this works. Studio, obviously, you've got all the equipment, you've got all the space. Definitely, you should do it. But for me, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is more run and gun. So if I'm doing run and gun, I don't want to shoot manual focus. I do not want to shoot with a heavy cinema camera. I don't want like 7 different settings for one thing. And I don't want the aperture to change with every point. I want the aperture to go from 2.8 to 3.2. I want to skip all of that.
And, you know, speaking about photography, I remember we were on a set together actually not long ago. And then somebody actually asked you, and I kept that question for the podcast. And I think you've been asked this question so many times. Which camera is the best?
All of them.
What would you prefer? Canon? Nikon? Is you a Sony guy? What are you?
All of them. I love all of them. Apart from Blackmagic, they suck. I'm kidding.
Meanwhile, being filmed on Blackmagic.
No, I
Switch
don't.
all the cameras off, please.
I don't have a preference for cameras because I've been fortunate enough with my role as a writer on at FStoppers. I get access to a lot of different kinds of cameras. So I like a lot of different cameras for different reasons. I don't like every camera. There isn't a camera that I think is the best. Like I love Hasselblad cameras because of the colors they produce, but I don't like Hasselblad cameras because historically they've been a bit clunky. The autofocus sucks. And there are lots of things that I dislike about Hasselblad, but the one thing I love about Hasselblad, which I think is more important to me than anything, is colors. A lot of people overlook these things. Like people look at things like dynamic range and you know, how many megapixels he has and all that nonsense. And I'm going to be honest with you, none of that makes a big difference. None of that makes virtually no difference to the result. Yeah. Like the resolution, I can upscale it in post. I don't really care. I know people say, oh, it's not the same. It's not the same. I know it's not the same, but you can't tell.
But you were mentioning something really interesting on that day as well, that you would use a Sony for lifestyle pictures and then Canon for portraits.
Yeah, because Sony's smaller. The Sony I've got smaller lenses for the Sony camera, so I would use a lifestyle I would use the Sony camera for lifestyle. I'd use Canon for architecture if I'm not using a phase one. It depends on the project. Like, I don't have a particular camera for one specific thing, but I like the colors from Sony for lifestyle. I like the colors from Canon for architecture. I like the colors for Hasselblad for virtually everything. I like the colors from Leica for virtually everything as well. So it's predominantly down to colors.
I see.
It's mostly down to colors, if not completely down to colors. I don't like shooting with Fuji very often because I don't like their basic color scheme. But I like the fact that you can change it in post. But then it's just a pain. It's just a bit of a pain. So Fujifilm is one of those camera manufacturers I'm not a fan of massively when it comes to their GFX series. Their smaller mirrorless cameras, love them. But the GFX series, they're some of the best cameras on the market, but I don't like their colors. So I try not to use them. But essentially, the main thing that if anyone's looking for the best camera, the main thing you should be looking for is colors. That's it. You might be told stuff like, oh, you can correct it in post, just shoot in RAW, you can correct it in post. You probably can't. I know I'm not as skilled as some colorists that work on set. Like, some of these colorists are crazy. So if you're not like someone who's highly talented when it comes to color, who hasn't done color grading for a long time, who doesn't understand it, either use a color profile or something like that.
Yeah.
Or choose a camera that has good colors straight out, because you're probably not going to be able to change them the way that you think you will.
You see, we're talking about professional cameras, but obviously the podcast is all about businesses and how they could, take advantage more of the current trends, how they can take advantage of the new technology that's on the market, which is fairly accessible if you have to compare it to 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, massive.
There's a misconception in using a professional photographer.
I don't know.
And I
think 9 times out of 10, that person who says to themselves, yeah, I'm just going to use a smartphone, I'll just get a student to come in and do it. Yeah, they're right. They're absolutely right.
But then why does it matter to use a professional photographer?
Because they're not in the place to need a professional photographer. They're not the client. They're not the person who would need it. They're not the person who's going to want it. They're not the person who's going to pay for it. So they're absolutely right. If they're going to hire a student to do it, yeah, get a student to do it. And it's cheaper. It's less expensive. You probably get decent results. You might be rolling the dice on some things, but more than likely, you're going to get decent results.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, how does quality affect buyers, like clients, customers? How does that?
It depends. So if you've got products, let's say you've got a brand new product and you're in a particular market, you're a luxury product owner or something like that, the last thing you probably want to do is have your luxury item, which is expensive, photographed by a phone on like some table or something, or photographed by someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing. You probably do want to hire a professional photographer whose particular style you like. So it's not just like, I'm going to get a photographer in. No, you got to get a photographer in that you are going to work with, that you understand, and you know that their style is going to be specific for what you're trying to achieve. That's where brand guidelines come in. You can't just hire any old photographer. Like, oh yeah, he's a professional. Oh, I know this guy.
When you're hiring a photographer, how do you know who you should hire? Or what would you recommend business owners to look for when they're hiring a photographer?
When you have...
Besides a beautiful portfolio.
No, you don't look at the portfolio initially. You look at what you want to achieve. It's quite a selfish thing. You need to basically look at what you want to achieve. So maybe a lot of people go on Pinterest. Pinterest is great because you can have a look at a wide range of images and styles and concepts very quickly and work out what kind of angle you're going for. So, for example, I told you about the moisturizer I was working on, right? So there's this product that I'm working on and I needed photographing. I have my style of photographing products, but I'm not a product photographer. I could do it relatively well, and it would be good enough to go on a website and still look very good. But that's not what I want. I wanted this girl called Hayley. Her style is something that I really liked. And the reason I knew that I liked her style is because I knew what I wanted my product to look like. I knew how I wanted to present it. I wanted to present it in a particular way. I saw her images and I was like, wait, that's what I need. That's what I like. I'm not going to do the pictures on this one. I'm going to hire her. And I did. And she's basically doing the work for it as we speak.
As a business owner, going back again on the same question, I guess, just circling around it. The first step would be to know exactly what you want. And is there like an advice that you should offer to business owners? Like, hey, you should have a strategy in place, any process from the point you choose your photographer to the point of you actually being there in the studio with the photographer, if you're going to be.
I think that the best photographers generally tend to be photographers that don't need an incredibly detailed brief telling them how to do their job. For example,
how about mood boards, storyboards?
Mood boards and storyboards are great. But if you hire a good photographer, they will be able to facilitate that. A good photographer will basically say, okay, what kind of style do you want? What kind of vibe are you going for? What do you need? And then they'll create a mood board. They create a storyboard. And then from there, they'll put some pictures on just to kind of start things off. And then they'll get you to fill that up so that they understand exactly what you need. A good photographer will also try and like make things, like, for example, it's kind of like if you hire a plumber, you don't know what's wrong, right? I don't know what's wrong with my pipes. I just know this is blocked. You just show him where you think the blockage is or what's wrong. They'll come and they'll fix it. They're not going to ask you, well, do you want me to use this wrench or do you want me to use that? No, they just do it. That's what a good photographer should do. They come in, you tell them like kind of what you want. I've got this product. I need to photograph it. What kind of style do you need? Okay, this is the kind of vibe I want. Great. They just come in and they do it. It's not a matter of you need to hold their hand. That's not a good service. That's a terrible service. If you as a client hire a photographer and they're constantly asking you this and that and whatever, and they're getting frustrated because they're not getting an answer from you, then that means they're not as good as they say they are.
But I think it's important the brief to be on point, right?
Because the brief needs to be generally, what pictures do you need? The brief shouldn't need to be, I want this angle exactly like this. I want this and that. Then you're being too controlling. And it's like, why did you hire this photographer in the first place? Just do it yourself.
What if you give them a brief as a business owner and you get the pictures back and you're like, I don't really like them. They're not what I had in mind. How do you fix that?
Oh, that's just down to the negotiations. So you got to be clear about, this is something that you do really well. You make sure that a contract's been signed. You make sure that the client knows exactly how many pictures and what pictures are required. And then you sign off on what they want. And this is something which really helps. Because
this is very subjective. For example, photography itself. If you have like a product photography, you have like a box that you have to shoot and it's a product shoot, right? Yeah. What if the way you take it, for example, doesn't really go well with the client? How would you know how to take that particular picture to please the client? Because they're going to show you an example, or how would you cross that bridge? How would you fill that gap?
As a photographer, if I come across a situation where I'm shooting something and then the client's not happy with that particular image, that's happened.
Many times.
Yeah, that's happened. It happens a lot. And that's just part of the game, really. And you need to build up a thick skin because sometimes it sucks. You're just not going to be good enough. It happens. And you can apologize and you can move on and you can do some kind of negotiation or whatever. But you will come across situations where you were not capable at delivering what the client wanted.
Yeah, but what if the pictures are really good and everybody else says like, oh my God, they're really, really good.
It doesn't matter. It's what the client wants, right? Other people aren't paying you. The client's paying you. It's what the client wants. You can obviously offer some kind of education. You can offer some degree of consulting, or some information or something like that. You can give your thoughts and you can give some advice, but you can't change their mind, right? You can if they've convinced themselves that they want X, that's what they want. And if you're not able to deliver that, then maybe you shouldn't take the job, or that's what it is. That's just what it is. Occasionally, you may come across a client that just wants something which is a little bit crap, and you can do it, but you feel like you want to tell them, actually, that's not good. and maybe they don't want to listen. Again, these things happen.
What are some of the most common things that you see as mistakes
In business or photography?
In the business of photography? First in the business of photography, and then some common mistakes that you see clients doing when they approach a photographer.
I've had lots of different ways clients have approached me, so I don't know if there's like a common way that people, but I'll tell you, photographers' biggest mistake is buying too much equipment. Photographers love gear. Oh, photographers love gear. And I think there are two kinds of photographers that I notice, which are some photographers who don't give a crap about gear or just use whatever gear they have and they just go out and shoot, and other photographers like me who are interested in gear, and we spend far too much money on stuff that we don't need or we will never ever use. And that, if you spend more than you make, though, your business is dead. I have become a lot better in the last few years. In the last few years, I've become a lot more conditioned. In fact, I haven't bought any new cameras, any new lenses, or anything like that.
How does that life feel like?
It feels great because I've got more money. I've got more money to travel and do things. It's amazing.
Do you do any courses on that? I want to sign up.
It's amazing when you just kind of step out of that rat race of the next camera, the next new thing or the next amazing thing and whatever. And I'm just I don't care.
Clients don't really know that. They don't really appreciate the fact that you're on set with a 5D Mark IV or a 1DX.
If you use a 5D Mark II today and take pictures with that, who's going to know? Which client's going to be able to tell? Oh, this is not 30 megapixels. Oh my God, it's horrible. They're putting it on Instagram anyway. That's 2 megapixels. No one can tell. No one can tell. Lenses are still as good. Yes, some lenses are really sharp now, ridiculously sharp, but in the grand scheme of things, you can't tell.
Right. So basically, as a business, I think that it's really important to have professional pictures being taken. And the reason I'm saying that is, for example, you're on Google, you're looking for, beauty salon, let's say just a beauty salon. And then you go on their website and they have A, stock pictures, B, low quality pictures that they make the salon look bad.
So do you mind if I just jump in? Okay. When you're on Google and you look through pictures and you see a place and they've got crappy, wonky pictures, badly exposed, colors look horrible, everything just looks ugly. Your impression of that place is that. You think everything's wonky and ugly. You might not think it out loud, but you will perceive that place to be worse. You will perceive that place to be less than. It's just a place that you think, I don't want to visit. But that's probably good for the customer. Because if they went with that, then maybe that is that business. Maybe that's what that company is all about. They didn't want to spend that money. They didn't want to take the time and put the effort in to take those proper pictures. So if they're not doing that much, if they couldn't even do that much, then I don't know. I'm not convinced as a customer about their service. That's how I see it. I'm just not convinced about their service. I'm not convinced about their care to attention and their attention to detail, their passion towards what they're doing. I'm not convinced. I'm not fussed about whether it's been taken on a phone or not. I don't care about that. Because a lot of phone pictures that businesses take can be very good because they put the time, the effort, and they've got the care. Maybe they don't have the budget, but they've got the time and they want to put that effort in to take those good pictures.
But how about stock? Using images on your
images?
website. There's
stock images are great. If you're starting out and you don't have a budget for anything at all, stock images can be really good. But it's such a tricky place. So if you're using stock images for that common one where you've got a girl with a headset, and she's acting like she's talking, that one works. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. But if it's pictures specifically about your branding, specifically about your style and all that kind of thing, then you would never, ever, ever, ever even think about using stock, because there isn't a stock image that's going to be appropriate for your brand. I can tell you right now, I've seen all of them. I've seen every single one of them. It's not there. Okay.
So you say if you respect your brand and if you think that your brand, it's, at that, not even at that level.
If you respect your brand.
If you respect your brand, do you think you should have then in that case professional photography taken and
yes,
tailored for your brand.
But you do need to be on a particular vibe. You do need to be on a particular level. You can't be just starting out, because if you're starting out, then I wouldn't recommend you spend lots and lots of money on high-end photography if you don't have the budget. If you've got the budget, then yeah, go for it. But I think one of the worst things that people can do is they skimp out and they spend they go cheap. They hire the cheapest possible option to try and get these pictures done, or they'll get like someone, or they might buy a camera for in-house and just be like, here, you take these pictures, we'll get it done. Because it's cheaper to buy a 250 or 300 pound camera than it is to hire, a photographer and spend like a couple of thousand on that. Yeah. So I get that. It is cheaper. But that's the worst response. It's not a good idea to do that, because it kind of sets in motion this idea that you don't ever need good photographers. You don't ever need good pictures. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, we'll just do it ourselves. It's fine. We've got all these cameras here. We can do it all ourselves. I mean, some companies, in all fairness, they do buy those cameras, but they also respect the art as well. And they also will hire professional photographers, but they'll use high-end cameras for their everyday stuff, just social media and Instagram. But that's a company that's clear about their branding. Like, they know that even for their social media pictures, they want a good level of quality. They don't want the iPhone look. They do not want the Samsung look. They want a good quality image, even when they put it just on social media. It doesn't matter if someone who doesn't know what they've taken it is taking it with that. They just know that they want that level of quality. And I've seen that with companies.
So how does photography fit in your brand? How do you place it? How do you
Photography is the first thing that someone's going to see about you, right? People see your logo, people see your pictures.
And do the pictures, do they have to be done in a specific way that fit your brand, or how do you know that?
Your pictures have to fit your brand. Like, if your pictures don't fit your brand, what are they doing there? Like, they serve no purpose then.
Then you're stalking.
This is why stock images don't work. Stock images only work to a certain level, and it's a very, very low basic level. It's not anything higher than maybe, I don't know, graphs. Maybe a picture of some graphs or something. Maybe that'll work. Or maybe a picture of, if you've got a call center or whatever, some girl. But if you've got a call center of your own, why don't you take a picture of your own call center or your own people? Like, it makes no sense to have a stock image. Stock images, I would highly recommend against it. Stock graphics,
maybe, yeah. Agencies now, they're kind of like going around, especially within UK, that pictures taken with mobile or pictures that don't look professional, they work better for Facebook ads than actually professional pictures would.
Depending on the market, depending on the brand, depending on a lot of several factors, yes, that's correct, absolutely correct. They have a certain authenticity to them. When there are certain brands, like there's a soap manufacturer, and there's a cosmetics manufacturer. There's several of them, right? And virtually all of their content online has been shot with a phone. It's video, but it's been shot with a phone, and it's just people orientated. It's very little. Some of the content mixed in with that is content that they've shot in their factory, but it was shot on a phone. Everything, the whole thing. And the reason why that works is because it gives a certain level of authenticity. But that's their market. That's their branding. They're going towards authentic. They're going towards trust us, believe us. Look at what we've produced. This is great. This is something which is natural, or something which is better for you. And when a lot of people don't like the idea of highly photoshopped, highly edited images, because they look at that and think it's just fake. So when you have an image from your phone, it's less likely to have been edited. I guarantee that it has been edited. A lot of these campaigns that a lot of people do, where they take it on their phone and video, that it's been edited professionally by someone who knows what they're doing. Those are the ones that work. It's not like, some guy who just turned up, Tim from The Office just came with his phone and took some pictures, and, Tim from The Office, took a bunch of video. That's not what happens. And even if it did happen, it's been edited professionally. Yes, the agencies are right. They're absolutely right. Using content from your phones does have a certain degree of authenticity to it, and depending on where your brand sits, that's a great idea. It's a fantastic idea. But don't be fooled into thinking that this was done by someone who doesn't know what they're doing. This was definitely shot. The ones that work, the campaigns that work well, they were shot by a professional photographer. They were shot by a professional videographer. They were shot and edited by someone who knows what they're doing. It was not done in someone's freaking living room. The content, the reason why it worked the first few times and continues on with the trend, the reason why it worked is because it's not really about the camera. It's the fact that it was shot by someone who knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. The camera just masks that. Mm-hmm. All it's doing is it's making it look like it wasn't edited. It's making it look like it hasn't been adjusted in post. It makes it look like it's been authentic. Like, oh yeah, they just shot it on their phone and put it together. No. Every bit of editing that you would do on a professional piece of video has been probably done on this bit of video as well. Mm-hmm. Why do you think the cuts are perfect? Why do you think that, the graphics are done so well? Why do you think, they move from one clip to another in such a seamless way and everything fits and whatever? It looks so good, but it looks like it was shot on a phone. No, it was shot on a phone just to make it look like it hasn't been edited, but it has been edited.
So do you think having a professional photography increases the likelihood that people will buy a product from you or a service?
I know I keep giving you vague answers because
they're so vague.
But that's the reality. There's no set formula. There's no direct answer towards these things, because it's like, well, if a professional photographer took these pictures, that doesn't mean someone's going to buy it. It just means that something could potentially look good. But it's the story. It's the message. That's what resonates with people. Pictures and how good they look, that doesn't really resonate. Like, there are plenty of pictures that have been taken by incredible photographers that are not sharp, that are out of focus, that are messy, that don't have any of the technical prowess that some of these latest images that so many photographers have taken, but they've stood against the test of time. They still exist today. They're still explored. They're still monitored. They're still studied. Why? It's because they have like soul to it. They have like a particular message or a particular story. There's something about it which is more than just a few pixels on a screen. That's what generally sells. It doesn't have to be like emotional, like love and kind. No, it could be any emotion. It could be various emotions. As long as you're triggering some emotion in someone, that works. If your pictures can do that, then you probably will sell. You will more than likely be very successful if you can elicit some kind of emotion from someone. And it doesn't really matter what the image has been shot on or who it's been shot by. However, there's a higher likelihood, there's a higher chance that your pictures are going to demonstrate or bond with your audience more effectively if you have your pictures taken by someone who actually knows what they're doing.
Do you think that it's important to have a consistent visual style for your brand?
Oh, hell yeah. But come on, Rarish. Yes, of course.
I'm putting the questions, pretending I don't know.
So, look at Coca-Cola. You know exactly what... As soon as I mentioned Coca-Cola, the red and the calligraphy and the letters and the drink and everything came through, right?
Yeah.
That color red has been red for a very long time. Everyone knows Coca-Cola, or virtually everyone. And everyone who knows Coca-Cola knows what it looks like, knows what it tastes like, knows what the branding is going to be like, knows what the message is going to be like, knows exactly what it's going to look like on a billboard in general, right? This is why when you're driving down and you just see those colors kind of flash on that billboard at the corner of your eye, you kind of know, oh yeah, that's Coca-Cola.
Yeah. You
immediately know. McDonald's as well. McDonald's has done a lot of rebranding, but their overall message and their theme has been very consistent. Their guidelines have been very, very on point across the board. They did a massive shift away from those bright colors to kind of go towards a little bit more of darker tones and something a little bit more less child-friendly. Even though the food didn't change, but it worked, right? It absolutely worked. It made a huge difference. They stopped getting, it stopped being a place which was like just for kids, and you had more grown-ups going there. I mean, we go to McDonald's, right? So having consistency in your brand, it's like, yeah, of course.
How do you build that consistency though?
You need to hire someone, or you need to have someone, or you need to know someone, or you need to have your own understanding of it. So brand guidelines they're crucial. They're crucial. Because if you don't have brand guidelines, you don't have a plan. It's like, imagine going to a bank to try and get a loan without a business plan. He's going to be like, well, how do you know what you're going to do? Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, you want me to, give you X amount of money. Or if you go to an investor and you don't have a business plan, that's be the stupidest thing you could possibly do, right? You turn up and you're like, oh yeah, I don't have a business plan. Well, get the hell back into that office and write me a business plan and come back and then we'll talk. But until then, no, I'm not going to give you any money. And the reason for that is because no plan has been set in place. No plan has been put in motion. There isn't a clear vision. And if you write it down, it's on paper. It's not like, it's not lucid. It's not floating around. It's not, interchangeable. It's like a defined plan. Same with your brand guidelines. If it's just in your head, oh yeah, I think I know what my brand is going to look like. It's just floating around. It could be anything. It could change depending on your mood. And then, as you kind of like go through the months, like, wait, my brand started off there, now it's here. It looks yeah, because you never wrote down your brand guidelines. You never hired someone to write you some brand guidelines, or you don't know what brand guidelines are.
So how would you explain to people what a brand guideline is?
I'd explain it like a business plan. I would explain it like if you have a plan for your business when you were starting it up, your brand guidelines is a plan for your marketing and your social media and how your company looks to people. It's like having a stylist or a fashion, literally having a stylist, but a stylist that's going to help you look the part every single time for your company.
Yeah, but it's because they don't have the knowledge. They don't appreciate the importance.
How can you not appreciate the importance of a plan?
Because you think you spend money on the building itself. You've spent money on dolling it up. I don't know. You're spending money
dolling
on
it
stuff.
Up how?
I don't know. You're just gonna.
But by what measure? Like with what style?
Oh, there's no style whatsoever every time. Like there's not literally people that they tell you that they have a logo as their brand.
So they just hire.
They have no idea. Yeah, they have no idea what they're building. Like they're just like, I have a business. This is my business idea. I want to build it, and I'm just gonna create a logo because that's what everybody does when they start the business. So I have the name. I'm gonna create a name, and then I'm gonna create a logo, and I have the business. I'm gonna just register it.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of things and a lot of factors that people are missing out. How does the business feel from your perspective? What are your branding, as you said, branding guidelines? What are your archetypes? It's so much. Like the conversation can go like so far with this, but people are missing out.
I get it though. To some extent, I do get it, because a lot of people kind of look at that and just think, oh yeah, that's just fluff.
Yeah,
that's just bells and whistles. I'm just trying to make some money. I don't care about the soul behind my business. And it sounds a bit pretentious or cliche, or it just sounds a little like it just. Am I allowed to swear a little bit?
You can.
Okay. It just sounds like a little bit of bullshit. Okay. When you try and tell them that, it comes across like bullshit. If you talk to someone who's very like numbers orientated, they're gonna be like, "What the hell are you on about?" Okay. It's a freaking shell that makes me money. That's all it is. Okay. It's just a process that makes me money, so I can live the lifestyle that I want. That's what this business is. It is a process. And to them, this idea of like fluffing up things and, little frilly cushions and whatever, that sounds nonsense to them. But the way that I would explain it to them is how you would explain a business plan. Because a business plan isn't fluff, right? It's crucial. You need that to be able to get your business started.
Yeah.
And then you keep updating it, because it's something that you keep updating so that you understand what your goals are, what your plans are for the next year, and what you're trying to achieve, and whether you're achieving that or not. Because you measure it according to your business plan.
Yeah.
Well, your brand guidelines need to be part of your business plan. Because your brand guidelines are the identity that you are putting out there towards your customers. And if you think the identity that you have, that you're putting out to your customers isn't important, you need to get out of business. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about. You haven't started yet.
Yeah.
And if you push it like that, if you talk to these process-driven people, like, this is a process. This is a system that you need to put in place so that your identity is controlled by you. Your identity isn't controlled by whatever you're feeling in the meantime, or whatever anyone else thinks. You control the narrative of what you or how you are perceived as. That's what your brand guidelines are. It is a plan for your brand.
Going back on photography, how does professional photography impact the user experience?
It just looks cleaner. It looks more, it looks like something you want to be on. It doesn't look seedy. It doesn't look trashy or ugly. It's like being in a nice part of town. I don't want to go to freaking the crappy areas in Leeds. I want to go to the nicer places in Leeds because I don't want to go to the little crappy corner restaurant and risk food poisoning. I want to go to the nicer places and get some good food so I can enjoy my evening. Same thing with websites. Like, if you go onto like the crappy areas of the internet, it's like, oh yeah, this looks like a bit of a scam. I don't want to go to those crappy areas. It's literally like going from the crappy parts of town to like the nice areas of town. Okay, do you want to be the nice part of town, or do you want to be the crappy food poisoning part of town?
Yeah. That's an interesting analogy. And just I think because we're coming a bit towards the end of this podcast.
Okay.
And I think there are a few topics that I would like to touch on just before we conclude this episode. And I think one which is the most sensible to every single business owner out there, and one that will resonate with loads of photographers as well. How much does it cost to hire a professional photographer?
Oh, for God's sakes.
I didn't even know how to sugarcoat it.
More money than you want to initially spend. It's probably more than you thought it was going to be. And if it is, good.
In UK, if you ballpark it, like how much would a professional photographer...
So in the US, it's a little bit more expensive. US photographers charge quite a lot more. Over here, it depends on what area you're in. So for architecture is very different from interior photography or building photography or hotel photography. There's a big difference between the two. Architectural photography is its own thing, because architecture doesn't mean interior, exterior. It means you're photographing something of architectural significance. But that, you could charge virtually anything, because it depends on what you're photographing. I mean, the licensing rights of those images are going to be huge. So there's for that particular thing, you could charge a lot, because it comes down to two things. It comes down to what the actual job is, but more importantly, what they're going to use the images for. Because taking a picture here and taking a picture there, generally the same amount of effort. Okay? Generally. Not always. Generally the same amount of effort. It's more useful to understand what those images are going to be used for. If you're doing a campaign nationally, and you're going to post it everywhere on billboards and all this and all that, expect to spend tens of thousands of pounds on your photography. If you're putting your images on Instagram, maybe don't expect to spend tens of thousands of pounds.
So it all depends where you're using the pictures, and this is something that the photographer charges.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say you're using the picture on a campaign nationally, as you said earlier, it's going to cost you probably 10-15 grand. And does that have like a life?
And then you have like a licensing rights for those images as well. So it's not just, this is the fee and that's it. You're going to have to pay the licensing fees as well on top of that after the fact if you want to continue using those images.
What is the licensing?
So licensing fees are basically, most companies will agree to use the images that I produce for them for about a year, 2. That's the most. Most companies only agree, and I will say, okay, for that amount of time, this is how much it's going to cost. Companies that are inexperienced will generally ask for rights in perpetuity. It makes no sense, because they don't need them for that long. And also, it's going to cost a stupid amount of money to them for no reason. They're going to use those images for one season and then forget about it and never use it again. So why would you want to pay to use it forever? And I think a lot of companies generally request that because they think that they will end up owning the images. That's not how it works. You never own the images. So the licensing rights are, you have a license to use these images for X amount of time. But that's what you want. You want the shortest period that you can feasibly manage, because then you're paying the photographer the least amount that they need, the least amount that you can. And that's what licensing generally is. So on those big projects, you're going to have those licensing rights and discussions around that as well, about how long you're going to use those images and how much you're going to pay for that. But like I said, not every project is going to cost that much. Not every project is going to have license. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to give you a licensing rights on pictures that I took for you to put on Instagram. It's just too much hassle. It's not worth it, and it's not enough money moving around for us to be messing about with that.
What's the lifespan of a picture?
Lifespan of a picture depends how good you are, I guess. I mean, some pictures might last forever. I know that most marketing pictures will probably not last that long. If you took pictures for your marketing, then about a second, 2 seconds max.
You look at them and then you pretty much
because
over.
it's not about how long it's going to last for you. It's about how long it's going to last for the viewer. So as you put it on Instagram, the people that are viewing your pictures, they're going to view it for 2 seconds, maybe. So you've got 2 seconds multiplied across every single person that's viewed it. That's basically the life of your image. And however long, and then after like a little while on social media, you stop getting likes, right? Yeah. That picture's dead then. That's it. That picture's dead then. You could repost it again and try and revitalize it. But when you could do that, I would recommend you leave that. Like, you need to leave a little bit of a buffer. So maybe you could have like a second life on that picture. But initially, it's however much time you're able to get out of it. That's generally the lifespan of that picture. And then it just gets kind of forgotten into the depths of the internet. That's not the same with like images on your website or images on your campaigns that you put on billboards, or those digital screens from Clear Channel or something. That's different. But even then, because you don't have that much of a way to determine how many eyeballs have actually looked at it, it's a bit more difficult, or how many people actually liked it or something. Like, you can't do that. It's a little tricky, so it depends.
I think this ties in quite nicely with when you should update your pictures. Should you keep them for like 6 months, 3 months, and then try to update on your website especially?
Depends on the campaign. Social media, you need to have a regular churn. And Instagram is all about video now, so you need to have a lot of video. You need to have a lot of video regularly, and this needs to be done. But you do need pictures that are of certain quality on Instagram. Just because it makes the feed look good, how often do you need to refresh your pictures? In my experience, a lot of the big companies that I've worked with, they will generally do it about 3 months on average, if they're kind of adjusting their brand. But you don't adjust your brand that much. Interior and architecture, if you're photographing a hotel, you don't refresh your pictures for like 3 to 5 years, because the interior is still the interior. Unless you've done a complete refurb, then yeah, you get some new pictures done. But if you haven't got any refurb, if you haven't like changed anything inside the interior, then why do you need new pictures? That's if you're doing interiors and hotels and that kind of thing. Architectural photography, not really. Like, you get it photographed when you've got something significant, and then maybe like 10 years or something.
Oh wow, that's with architecture basically.
With architecture is different. I'm not talking about building photography. I'm talking about architecture. So something with architectural significance. Very different from just like a hotel down the road. If you're taking portraits, like your LinkedIn profile picture, depends how different you look today compared to last year. Last thing you want to do is, like, if you've suddenly grown a beard like I did, maybe you should have your profile picture taken again. If you've lost a lot of weight, if you gained a lot of weight, I know you don't want to, but you probably should. Because last thing you want to do is meet a client and catfish them. Now, who's this guy?
You look slightly different.
So your profile picture, maybe refresh it every time you feel, once a year. Once a year, your profile picture.
I think as well and this is like literally how we're going to conclude this episode. It's trying to clarify how many styles and how many types of photography there are out there. Because we know about UGC content, which is user-generated content, which just to clear what that means.
Free
stuff, exactly. In your business or in any business, you should have a variety of pictures, professionally taken, UGC, user
is the
generated.
best.
And then what would you recommend? Because obviously you don't want everything to look professional at all times, or do you want everything to look professional?
No. So depends on platform, but first of all, UGC is the best. As a company, if you can generate as much UGC as possible, that is perfect.
But why?
Because not only do you have people that are pushing your brand, it's like testimonials. Yeah. It's like a picture form of a testimonial. It's like, wait, you like my stuff so much that you want to post it? Amazing. Great. Love that. Post that as much as you possibly can. But that doesn't replace your professional pictures. Your professional pictures are they're on a different branch. Because UGC isn't your brand. UGC is what people see about you from someone else's perspective. You don't control that narrative. You have no access to that narrative. So your brand is on a completely different branch. As much as you can get, throw all the UGC as you possibly can. Engage with all the UGC you possibly can. Any user-generated content that you have, revel in it. It's freaking amazing. Love it. But it's not your professional pictures, because that's not your brand. UGC is not your brand. That's not who you are. That's how people that's how people talk about you. But who you are needs to be what you control. So who you are is over here, and that's where your professional pictures come in. That's where your brand guidelines come in. That's where your website comes in. That's where your logo comes in. That's where the colors that you use, the fonts that you use, everything about who you are, your identity, and the way that you style yourself, that's over here on the complete other side of the spectrum. Maybe not spectrum, but on the complete other side of the table, maybe I should say.
Yeah.
It's very different. It doesn't exist in the same place. So you need both. But I love UGC.
I can see you have a lot of passion in it.
Yeah, UGC is great. It's so easy. And I think one of the mistakes that people make is that because UGC is so easy and because it fills up so much of your timeline and your content, you think, oh yeah, I could just keep throwing that out. I could just keep throwing out. And then you get a little bit lazy. But then what tends to happen is you no longer have control over your own brand. And if you don't have control over your own brand, then you've made a grave mistake. You've made a massive mistake. That's a stupid thing to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Usman.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Do we shake hands? Do we hug?
I think we hug after we stop, boss.